Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and today I wanted to blatantly steal a concept from Mecha. He recently did a video on his channel where he rated the units of Fire Emblem 8 Sacred Stones using the Fire Emblem sorter, and because I am unoriginal and uncreative, I just want to steal his concept. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with the Binding Blade characters, because Fire Emblem 6 Binding Blade is arguably the game that I know the most about. So the Fire Emblem sorter is a webpage that allows you to make a tier list of your favorite characters. It pitches two characters up against each other and you have to pick the one you like the most. However, instead of going by popularity, I am just going to pick the unit that I think is best in terms of pure gameplay. And yeah, I'm going to be making my own tier list, basically. Again, I'll be linking Mecha's video in the video description if you want to go check that out. He did Fire Emblem 8 Sacred Stones, and it ended up making a pretty good tier list. However, because I also like to give you guys something to watch in the meanwhile, I'm going to include a speedrun of Fire Emblem 6 hard mode that I recently did, just to basically just test myself and see how quickly I could play the game on hard mode in one go. So yeah, without further ado, we're just going to start. We're going to be selecting exclusively characters from Binding Blade, and whenever two characters that are unplayable comes up, like if it asks you to rate Murdoch versus Idun or something, I'm just going to tie them. And in the case that a unplayable character comes up versus a playable character, I'm always going to select the playable character. So let's go. Alright, I don't know, so this I actually tested, and I don't know why it pitches Eliwood and Hector up against each other. I don't know why it pitches Fire Emblem 7 Hector and Eliwood. It should really display their Fire Emblem 6, but I'm just going to tie this because neither of them are playable. Then Jan versus Ida, neither of them are playable, so I'm just going to tie them. Same here, Sephiel versus Guinevere. I do like Guinevere a lot though, but I'm still going to tie them up because at the end of the day, they're not playable. Again, Brunya versus Murdoch, still not playable. I'm going to tie them again. Gale versus Narshan, I'm going to tell them as well. Okay, there we go. Finally, two playable characters. So, Yoder versus Karel. That's easy. Yoder is easily the best. He has staff utility, and he's pretty good. Diane versus Yuno. So, this really depends on the route you take. I'd say Yuno is the best because the Ilya route is preferable to the Sakai route, and Yuno is a flyer, so you can at least use her to, ferry people around. So, okay, Douglas versus Niime. This one is very easy. Niime is easily one of the best units in Binding Blade with her staff utility and insane magic. Hugh versus Zeiss. I'm gonna go with... okay, so we have sort of like a Vyron Lord that joins kind of late and is overshadowed by Melady in Zeiss. And we got Hugh, who is a unpromoted mage that joins pretty late and costs money. And if you want him at his best, he's gonna cost you 10,000 gold, I think. I'm not a big fan of Hugh. I think Zeiss is better. But I always think he is very overshadowed by Melody, but he's still better than Hugh, I'd say. They both joined the same map, actually. Faye versus Jerrot. Faye is one of those weird units in Fire Emblem 6 that, she's pretty easy to train. You have to field her in the final map, and I think she can, one-shot some Manakits at base, or she can at least do very good damage to them. But she can only attack 20 times before she's unusable, unless you, use a glitch to steal a Firestone. Jerrot is a pretty mediocre pre-promoted Berserker. This is a tricky one, actually. Faye does have some utility, and she's sort of, force deployed in the final chapters, so you might as well use her to kill a Manakit or two. Jerrot, I don't know, this is actually tricky. I think I'm gonna go with Faye, just because she is forced deployed in the final map, so you there's no point in not using her, whereas Jerrot is completely overshadowed. He does get some nice hard mode bonuses, though. Anyway, Sophia versus Igreen. Igreen easily. Sophia's probably one of the worst units in Binding Blade. Perceval versus Cecilia. This is also a no contest. Perceval is easily one of the best units in Binding Blade. I think at base, Perceval can solo the game from the moment he joins. He doesn't need a single level. He can literally solo the game with his bases, even on hard mode. Then we got Kath versus Melady. This is also no contest. Melady easily one of top 3 units in Binding Blade. Kath is just a thief. She literally has no point. Bartra versus Raigh. I'm probably gonna have to go with Raigh here. As far as a dark magic user goes, he's pretty alright. Bartra he's got some nice bases, but he's pretty unusable in the long term due to his crap speed and skill. So I'm gonna go with Raigh. Elffin versus Echidna. I like Echidna a lot. She's a good pre-promote, but Elffin is a dancer, so he is by far the better choice. Although I feel like Echidna often gets underrated a lot. She's very, very solid as far as the pre-promote goes. Let's see, we got Thea, She's still called Tate here, but her official name is Thea versus Larum. Larum is easily the best choice here because she's a dancer. We got Geese versus Klein. I never liked Geese. I know he has some potential, but I never liked him much. I don't like his bases. They're very low for his drawing time. I like Gonzales a lot better, although I know that if you early promote Geese, he can do quite well. Klein is... I actually like Klein a lot. He has very solid bases, especially on hard mode. And he can... he's a really good wielder of the Murglice if you don't have any other bow users. It's a tricky choice, actually, but I think I'm going to go with Klein on this one. He's just... There's a lot of scary flyers in Binding Blade, and having a sniper capable of one-rounding them is actually pretty good. Alright, Shin versus Gonzales. I like Gonzales a lot, but I am willing to concede that he's not particularly great. Shin is probably better, just because he moves fast and he has a bow. But it's actually tricky. They join at pretty similar times. This is actually a tricky choice. I say they're probably pretty equal. So I guess I'll just tie them. I think that's definitely a possibility. So yeah, I'll actually tie them because I think they're about equal. All right. Oh, this is another one. Ogier versus Fear. Now, Fear is not good. I like Fear a lot, but I am perfectly willing to admit that Fear is pretty terrible, even though I am a big fan of her, because if you take your time, you can easily train her to 20 in the chapter she joins because of all the pirate reinforcements. Just stick her on a fort, and she gets like a level per pirate she kills, and you can easily get a Swordmaster Fear in the chapter after she joins. But I'm gonna have to say that Ogier is just simply the better one here. I don't like Ogier a lot. I think that he's very overshadowed by Dieck, but he is better than Fear. Alright, oh my god. Oh, Barth versus Gwendolyn. Okay, so it does follow some of the new names, because it doesn't call... It called Thea Tate, but it didn't call Gwendolyn Wendy. Oh boy. I am actually probably gonna have to say Barth here, because... Yeah, sure, you can train Gwendolyn, and she has better growth rates and better endgame potential, but why would you want a general? I mean, she's like Meg in Radiant Dawn. She has a lot of speed. Like, why do you need speed on a general? It doesn't make sense to me. At least Barth is tanky from the moment he joins, and he's pretty high level, so you can potentially early promote him to a general to get sort of a wall if you need to. So I'd say that Barth is probably... But it's... Actually, you know what? I'm going to tie them, because Barth is like one of those units that are just so bad. Even though he does have good, solid strength and defense, he just can't hit anything. So he doesn't end up being really good. And Gwendolyn's just... I think I'm actually going to tie them, because they're both 1-star units. Astor versus Lilina. Lilina is easily the better unit, because Astor is a thief. While Astor is easily the best of the 3 thieves, like Chad joins earlier, but Astor has the highest defenses, so he's much more tanky. He can like survive a bolting. Lilina's still a better unit, because thieves in Fire Emblem 6 are basically just walking lockpicks and steel bots. That's really all you need to do. In Fire Emblem 6, you don't even need to train them, because thieves can steal in Fire Emblem 6 regardless of speed. The speed thing didn't come in until Fire Emblem 7, where thieves actually need more speed than the targets to steal, whereas in Fire Emblem 6 they can steal no matter what, so you don't even need to train him. So Lilina's definitely the better choice. Alright, Treck versus Noah. I'm probably gonna have to say Noah here, because Treck is... I think out of the 4 Cavaliers, I think Treck's the weakest. Noah's at least pretty close to level 10, so you can early promote him to Paladin if you want. He has the most well-rounded stats, and while he's a little bit like... He's not... I think they're both pretty equal offensively. Treck has the most luck and defense, but I think Noah's a little bit better on the offense, but he does have a higher base level, which puts him up there. But they're both inferior to Alen and Lance. Alright, Jerrot versus Sue. This is easily Jerrot. Yeah, it calls him Zealot here, so that's weird. Sue is not very good. I don't like her at all. I think she's very bad. The only utility she has is in Chapter 7. She can assist with taking down the Wyverns with the steel bow. But Jerrot is easily the best choice here. He is basically a second Marcus, which is really nice. Dorothy versus Saul. Saul is easily the best choice here. Saul is probably one of the best staff users in Binding Blade. He's a lot better than Alen, and well, Dorothy's an archer, so who cares? Clarine versus Rutger. Clarine's useful. She's a mounted staff user, which is definitely good. but I think Rutger's on the better end because Rutger, of course, if you play hard mode, he gets insane bonuses, and he's also one of the only units that can reliably take down some of the bosses early on. Leveling Rutger up to 10 and early promoting him to a Swordmaster makes the early game a lot easier, and his bases are just really good for a Myrmidon. Also, keep in mind that in Fire Emblem 6, Swordmasters get a 30% crit boost as opposed to 15% in the later versions, so as a Swordmaster, he can actually output some incredible damage. With the Killing Edge, his crit rate goes up to like 70%, which actually makes him good in the endgame. So I'm gonna go with Rutger here, even though I like Clarine a lot. I think they're both 4-star units, but I think Rutger is slightly better. Lugh versus Chad. Chad is useful because he's an early game thief, but Lugh is easily one of the best mages in Binding Blade in my opinion. He's much better than Lilina. I like Lugh a lot, so I'm gonna go with Lugh here. Oh, Shanna versus a lot. The fighters in Binding Blade are shit. They're really bad. You just want to trade their axes over to Marcus and Jerrot, really. There's very little reason to use them, so I'm gonna go with Shanna here. She's pretty good. I just did a spotlight on her. She's a good unit. Dieck versus Wade. This is easy. Dieck is one of the better units in Binding Blade. He tends to fall off a little bit, but he's really strong in the early game. With an Iron Blade, he can one-round a lot of the fighters. It's really good mercenary. Merlinus versus Elen. Well, Merlinus has no value in Fire Emblem 6. You don't even need to bring him to send items to convoy, so Elen, by far. Balls versus... Wow, okay, this is a tricky one, actually. I think... Okay, so... They're both 1-star units, but I'd say that Volt is probably like a 0-star unit, because he's probably the worst unit in Binding Blade. Even though he comes with an early join time, and he can chip a little bit on hard mode, which is somewhat useful. Wow, actually this is tricky, because, you know, Volt can actually contribute a little bit in the first chapter. Like, he chips with Marcus. Like, Marcus plus Volt can kill a fighter on hard mode. Whereas Balls, you don't even want to send him into combat, because... he just gets... I think Balls can actually get one-rounded by certain fighters in the first chapter if they start with enough strength and speed to double. So Balls is... this is a close one, actually. I mean, while Volt has some use, I think I'm gonna tie them, because they're both equally crap, I'd say. But then again, Volt just has that slight edge over that he can chip a little bit in the first chapter, which like puts him a little bit above a 1-star. But at the end of the day, I think I'm just going to tie them. Alright. Alen versus Lance. This is a tough one, but Lance wins out, at least in my opinion. He has the higher base speed, and that makes him a lot better. He also has a higher speed growth, if I'm not completely mistaken. I always liked Lance over Alen. Alen is stronger, but Lance is faster. Lance, I think, has 1 or 2 more points of base speed compared to Alen, so it's a lot easier to get Lance into doubling territory. If you play on normal mode, Lance actually doubles a lot of the fighters on the first map naturally, which really puts him a lot higher than Alen, at least on the first map. But even on hard mode, I say Lance is the better choice of the two. Marcus versus Roy. Well, this is easy. Roy sucks in Fire Emblem 6. He's probably one of the worst lords in the franchise, because he's stuck in his unpromoted form. Marcus is easily one of the best units in Binding Blade, so this is no contest, really. Again, a choice between Eliwood and Jan. They're both unplayable, so I'm just going to tie them. Again, tie... Oh, Narshan versus Yoder. I'm going to pick Yoder because he's playable. Niime versus Yuno. Niime is easily the best. Douglas versus Yuno. I think Yuno has some use, whereas Douglas is completely worthless. Douglas versus Diane. I'd say that Diane is exclusive to the Sekai route, but even so, he has some use because he has a mount, whereas Douglas is just complete trash. Zeiss versus Faye. I think Zeiss is better. Hugh versus Faye. I think Faye is just a really weird unit because she's not really that wide. She has 20 attacks and she's gone. Hugh, at the very least, can be trained into a viable unit, so... Perceval versus Igreen. Perceval, no contests. Cecilia versus Igreen. This is a trickier choice. Cecilia, at the very least, is a mounted staff user. Igreen is... I don't know. I mean, snipers in Binding Blade aren't terrible because of all the flyers. But at the same time, Cecilia is really trash. But then you can also argue that Cecilia can use her caliber, and thus she can also... Cecilia over Igreen. Melady versus Raigh. Melady easily, she's one of the best units in Fire Emblem 6. Cath versus Raigh, I'm gonna say Raigh, because the thieves just they're not really great in Fire Emblem 6, you just bring them to open chests. Barth versus Cath, Barth is better, because he can fight. Oh, Elffin versus Larum. Well, they're basically the same unit, so I'm just gonna tie them. Echidna versus Thea. I'm going to go with Echidna here. She has really good base speed, and she's just a really solid pre-promote. Shin versus Klein. I'm gonna go with Klein. I really like Klein. I think he's a very good unit in Binding Blade, so I'm gonna go with Klein. Geese versus Shin. Didn't I just... No, I tied Shin, Geese, and Gonzales earlier. I think I'm gonna have to go with Axis and Binding Blade are just so bad. I think I'm gonna go with Shin here. Ogier versus Wendy, or Gwendolyn. Ogier is definitely the better choice. Fear is better than Gwendolyn. Noah versus Lilina. This is a tricky one. Lilina isn't fantastic, but mages in Binding Blade are pretty good due to air caliber. Noah is a Cavalier, though. I think I'm gonna tie them. I think they're pretty similar. I'd rate Lilina 3 stars, and I'd also rate Noah 3 stars, I'd say. I think they're pretty similar. I'm gonna tie them up. Astor versus Treck. Treck's the better one, because Astor's a thief. Jerrot versus Saul. I think I'm gonna go with Jerrot here. Pre-promoted Paladin is just too good. Saul is a strong staff unit, but if I had the choice between Saul and Jerrot, I think I'd pick Jerrot. Sue versus Saul. Saul's better. Dorothy versus Sue. I'd say Sue's better because Dorothy's just so crap. Rutger versus Lugh. They're both 4-star, I'd say. But I think I'm probably gonna go with Rutger. Lugh versus Clarine. Ooh, this is also another tricky one. I think I'm gonna tie them because they're both 4 stars. I mean, I know I have a bit of a bias towards Clarine because I really like her, but I think that a mounted healer is really useful in Binding Blade, so I'm gonna tie them up. Shanna versus Dieck. Ooh, this is also a tricky one. I'd say they're both 4 stars. I think they're equally good. Dieck just has really good bases. Shanna has flying utility. I think I'm gonna tie them up. Oh, Lot versus Wade. They're both equally bad. I'm going to tie them up as well. There's really no difference. But I mean, the difference between Lot and Wade is Lot has more defense, but he has shit strength, and he has some speed. Wade has everything but speed. So you got a fighter that... Lot can't do damage because he doesn't have strength, and Wade can't do damage because he can't double. So they're both really shit. Volt versus Elen. Elen's definitely the better choice because Volt sucks. Volt's at least better than Merlinus because Merlinus is not... He has no point. There's no point in fielding Merlinus. Marcus is better than Lance. Lance is better than Roy. Alen is better than Roy. We have 2 unplayable characters right here, so I'm just going to tie them. Niime versus Yoder. I'd say Niime is better. Yoder is also a pretty good stat bot, but Niime is better because she has more magic and she can use the Apocalypse to warp people halfway across the screen. Yuno versus Yoder. I'd say that Yoder probably wins out here. Just because it's kind of nice to have a guy that can just... I mean, his magic is good, staff rank is good. Juno's just a fairy bot. I'd say Yoder wins out. Yuno versus Corral. I think Yuno's better because Corral is only available in 2 chapters and you don't really need him for anything. Diane is also probably better than Corral because Corral, again, he's only available in 2 chapters and you don't really need him for anything. Douglas is also better than Corral. Perceval is definitely better than Zeiss. Zeiss is definitely better than Cecilia. Cecilia and Hugh. I think... I think Hugh would probably win out. Then again, Cecilia is a pre-promo that can use staves, and Hugh costs 10,000 gold, which is pretty bad. He costs 5,000 gold if you reject him 3 times. But then his stats suck, so I'm gonna go with Cecilia here. Green is probably better than Hugh, because she's a pre-promote. She doesn't cost anything. Hugh is better than Sophia, though, because Sophia is just complete garbage. Sophia versus Faye. Faye is better. Sophia versus Garrett. Garrett is better. Melady versus Larum. Larum's better because she's a dancer. Echidna versus Melady. Melady is better than Echidna. Raigh versus Echidna. That's a tricky one. No, Echidna for sure. Thea versus Raigh. Raigh's... Thea's like a really lackluster unit in my opinion. I liked her a lot back in the day, but she joins a little bit too late, I think, for her basis. Her lance rank is really shit. She's pretty far away from being able to promote, I think. I'm not actually sure about that one, but I think I'm gonna go with Raigh. Actually, Thea gets hard mode bonuses and she's a flyer. Raigh joins pretty late. I'm gonna tie them. I think they're both probably 3-star units. Ogier versus Klein. I like Klein. I don't like Ogier, but at least Ogier joins earlier. And Klein is a pre-promoted sniper, but Ogier at least joins earlier, so he has some use. I do think Klein is better than Fear, though, as much as I love Fear. And Shin is definitely also better than Fear. Geese is... now we're getting pretty similar here. I think they're both probably... this is a tricky one. I think Geese would win out against Fear. Zealot versus Noah, or sorry, Jerrot definitely wins here. Saul versus Noah. This is also a tricky one, I think. I think Noah would probably wins out a little bit here, although Saul does have that nice staff utility. Noah's not super great. I think I'm gonna tie them. Sue versus Treck. Treck is better because Sue sucks. Sue is better than Astal because Astal's just a thief. Astal's better than Dorothy because Dorothy's one of the worst units in the game. Rutger is better than Dieck, I'd say, especially on hard mode. Dieck is bad. Lugh and Dieck are pretty similar. They're pretty similar. I'd say tie, probably. I like them both, but I'm yeah, they're both 4 stars. I'm gonna tie them up. Wade versus Chad. You know, even though I usually don't let thieves win out here, Chad has utility, whereas Wade is completely useless, so I'm gonna go with Chad. Marcus is better than Elen. Lance is better than Elen. Alen is better than Elen. Elen is better than Roy because she can do something Roy can't. Roy is better than Volt because Volt sucks. Niime wins out because Brynja's not playable. Yoders wins out because he's playable. Yeah, it's gonna give me a bunch of characters versus a non-playable one in Brynja, so all of these characters will win against Brynja. Here's a tie. Perceval's really good, but Lalum's better. I'd say that... ooh, Perceval versus Melady. That's a tricky one. Melady's really good, but so is Perceval. I think Perceval wins here. He's just so good. His bases are just crazy. But Melady is definitely better than Zeiss. Echidna's better than Zeiss. Thea's probably better than Zeiss because he joins really late. She joins a little bit earlier. I'd say probably better. Zeiss is better than Bartra, though. Bartra doesn't really have that much utility. Cecilia is better than Bartra. Green is probably better than Bartra. Bartra's just... he really struggles to stand out in any meaningful way. Hugh is... we're getting close, but I still would rate Hugh above Bartra. I'd even rate Thea above Bartra, but Garrett also is probably better than Bartra because Garrett can actually fight a little bit with his critical bonus. Like, as a Berserker, he gets the 30% crit, so he can at least one-shot certain units. But Bartra's better than Sophia because she's bad. And Cath has... oh, neither of these units have any purpose, but at least Sophia gives you a guiding ring, so... yeah, I'm gonna pick her over Cath, because Cath, there's really no point in using Cath ever. Jerrot wins over Ogier. So, Ogier versus Saul. I'd say... I would say that... they're pretty similar. They're both... I'd go with Saul, I think. Treck versus Ogier, also pretty similar. I'd say Treck because he has a horse. Sue versus Ogier. Ogier probably wins out. Klein versus Sue. I'd go with Klein over Sue. Sue versus Shin. Shin is definitely the better choice. Geese versus Sue. Gets trickier and trickier. I'm probably gonna have to go with Geese. They're pretty similar, but I think he's slightly better. Fear versus Sue, I'd say Fear, because Sue's just not very good, but Sue's at least better than Gwendolyn, so we're gonna go with Sue over this one. Astor versus Gwendolyn, at least Astor has some purpose, unlike Gwendolyn, so he wins out. This is a shit show right here. Dorothy versus Gwendolyn, I'm still gonna go with Dorothy, because at least she can contribute something with her bow. against the Wyverns of Chapter 7 if you want to bring her, so there we go. Marcus versus Rutger, definitely Marcus. Lance versus Rutger, definitely Lance. Alen is also better than Rutger, but I'd say that Rutger is better than Elen for sure. Dieck versus Alen, probably Dieck. I mean, Alan's alright, but you can easily replace her with Clarine later on. Chad versus Elen. You need Chad, at least in the early game, to open chests and stuff, but Elen can actually have some viability long term, so I'm gonna go with Elen. Roy versus Chad. Oh, this is a tricky one. I think they're both equally. I'm probably gonna go with Chad. Loy versus Raigh. Roy versus Wade. They're both pretty shit, but at least Wade can be benched, Roy can't, and you can use Roy's rapier to weaken horses, unlike Wade, which can't hit anything with the halberd. So, Volt versus Wade. It's again, they're both pretty bad. I'd say Wade probably wins out a little bit because he can at least tank a little bit, whereas Volt is just horrible. Larum versus Niime. Larum wins because she's a dancer. Perceval versus Niime. This is a tricky one, actually. Perceval has bases to solo the game. Niime has infinite warp range and staff utility. This is a tricky one. Both of them are really good. Both of them are easily 5 stars, but one unit is very good for warp strats. One unit is very good if you play normally and you don't warp skip. I'd say the average player probably would find more use in Perceval than Niime, because Perceval, as I said, he can solo the game with his base stats, even on hard mode, whereas Niime, she's good utility, she can like heal physics from halfway across the map and warp units to the throne. So if you go for LTC like or 0% growth run or anything like that, Niime is definitely going to be your best friend, but for most normal players, I'd say Perceval probably wins out. Melady versus Niime. Niime's better. Melady's better than Yoder. Echidna, I'd say she's better than Yoder. Thea is... she's still better than Yoder, because Yoder's just a stat bot that comes into the endgame. Zeiss is probably better than Yoder. It's like, not that Yoder's bad, it's just that he's not particularly useful, because you usually have Niime at the point where Yoder joins, so he kind of doesn't end up being all that useful. So I'm gonna say Zeiss here. Cecilia versus Yoder, it's a tricky one. Cecilia joins earlier and can contribute a little bit, so I'm gonna go with Cecilia. Green versus Yoder, I'd say Green. Hugh versus Yoder, I'd say Yoder has more utility than Hugh. Hugh versus Yuno. Again, it's tricky to rate these two, but I'd have to say that at least Yuno has some purpose, whereas Hugh is just expensive. Hugh versus Dion, probably Dion. Hugh versus Douglas. Douglas is really shit. At least Hugh can do something. Faye versus Douglas. I'd say Faye has more use than Douglas. Garrett versus Douglas. At least Garrett can fight. Barth versus Douglas. I mean, generals are just so bad in Fire Emblem 6. I'm gonna have to go with Barth. At least he can use a bow to do some damage to the Wyverns. But... Douglas versus Sophia. I mean, Douglas can at least have bases. Sophia can't do shit. Karel versus Sophia. At least Karel can kill stuff in the endgame. Sophia can't kill anything. Narshin is not playable, so Sophia wins out here. Kath wins out against Narshin. Oh, Marcus versus Jerrot. Marcus is the best of the two. They're both good. I'd say Lance is better than Jerrot, because Jerrot's good, but Marcus is usually enough to carry you through the early game, so you don't need both. But I'd go with Lance, because he's good in the end game, or in the early game, and he has better end game potential, so I'd say the same thing about Alen is probably better than Jerrot, just because, again, Lance and Alen are just two really good cavaliers. I'd even say they're probably about equal. I'd say Rutger and Jerrot. I like Rutger, but I also like Jerrot. They're both pretty good. I'd tie them up, probably. Dieck versus Saul. I'd go with Dieck, I think. I wonder if I have contradicted myself sometimes. I wonder if they've done two equal pairings and I've selected differently. Could have been the case, but I'm gonna go with Dieck here. Elen versus Saul. Elen joins earlier, but Saul has higher level and higher staff rank, so he's better, I'd say. It's less luck, but that doesn't really matter. Treck versus Elen. I'd say Treck because he's a cavalier. Ogier versus Elen. I'd say Ogier, probably. Klein versus Elen, I'd still say Klein. Shin versus Elen, probably Shin. Geese versus Elen. I don't like Geese. I'm gonna go with Elen. Chad versus Geese. Chad has some use. I have difficulties finding a use for Geese. Roy versus Geese. Roy's pretty trash, but so is Geese, but he's not as trash as Roy. Roy versus Fear, I'd say probably Fear. Roy versus Sue. Wow, it's difficult to rate these units up against each other. I mean, at least Sue has some use with her horse. Roy versus Astor. Astor can open chests. Roy cannot do anything. Roy versus Dorothy. Okay, I'm gonna draw the line here. Roy's more useful than Dorothy. Wade versus Dorothy. Wade's more useful. Volt versus Dorothy. Man, this is a tricky one, because at least Volt's available in the early game to chip, whereas Dorothy can use a steel bow at base to help out in Chapter 7, but I think Volt wins out slightly here, just because he has an earlier join time. Merlin is not a unit, so Dorothy wins here. Merlin is not a unit, so Gwendolyn win here. Oh, Marcus versus Larum. Larum wins because she's a dancer. Marcus versus Perceval. I'm gonna have to say Marcus here, just because he helps you through Binding Blades early game. Lance versus Perceval, I'm gonna go with Lance because he helps you through the early game. Same with Alen, really. Perceval's great, but I'd still say Alen is better. But Rutger is like a step below Alen and Lance, so that puts him below Perceval in my opinion. Rutger versus Niime. Rutger's great for the early game, but Niime is just too strong. Rutger versus Melady. I'd say they're probably equal, but I'd say Rutger really helps you out in the early game though, especially on hard mode. They're both really good units. I think I'm going to tie them. Dieck versus Echidna. I think Echidna falls slightly below Dieck, just because Dieck's early game availability, Iron Blade damage, he can really just do a lot of damage to brigands and fighters who are really beefy, so I'm going to go with Dieck here. Saul versus Echidna. Echidna's really good. Saul is not, like, he's good for warp strats and stuff like that, but I think I'm gonna have to go with Echidna for this one. Saul versus Thea. I don't like Thea, so I'm gonna go with Saul. Treck versus Thea. Again, Treck joins earlier and has a horse. Thea's pretty bad for her join time, so I'm gonna go with Treck, I think. OJ versus Thea, probably OJ. Klein versus Thea, I'm gonna go with Klein. Shin versus Thea, I'm gonna go with Shin. Elen versus Thea, we're starting to get pretty similar, but I'd still go with a healer above her. Chad is just a thief, so at least Thea's better than him. Zeiss is better than Chad. Cecilia is better than Chad. Igreen is better than Chad. Yoda's better than Chad. Juno and Chad, I'd probably have Chad win out here. Geese versus Juno. Juno has some use as a flyer. Diane has some use as a pre-promote. Hugh versus Geese. I honestly wouldn't know. I'm gonna tie them up. Fear versus Faye. I'm gonna personally just select Fear on this one because Fear has some use, whereas Faye is just 20 attacks and she's gone. Sue is also probably a little bit more useful than Faye. She has some use in the early game. Astor can open chests. Roy versus Faye. I mean, to be fair, Roy is available, Faye is not. I don't know, I think I've rated Faye above certain characters that I'd rate above Roy, but if you really think about it, Roy, like, in the end game, what can Faye do that Roy can't with a Binding Blade? Roy can kill dragons with a Binding Blade in one shot, same as Faye, but Roy is at least available in the early game, whereas Faye is not, so I'm gonna go with Roy here. Same thing with... Wade is so shit, though. At least Faye can kill dragons in the end game. Garrett's better than Wade. Bartra, oh, they're pretty shit. But at least Wade is available for the early game, so I'm gonna go with Wade. Volt versus Bartra. Volt's just so bad. Douglas versus Volt. Douglas is... I think I'm actually gonna have to select Volt over Douglas here, because Douglas has no use. Volt can at least chip in Chapter 1. Dorothy over Douglas, sure. Wendy's so bad. I'm selecting Douglas over Gwendolyn. Same with Carol. Same with Sophia versus Gwendolyn. At least Sophia gives you a guiding ring. At least Cat opens treasure chests. Narshan's not playable, so she wins here. Narshan versus Malinas. Malinas is playable, Narshan's not. Alright, we are done, ladies and gentlemen. We are done. So, let us check. So, my tier lists. On first spot is Larum. Then Elffin, this is not particularly shocking. Then we got Marcus is number 3. Lance is number 4, Alen is number 5, Perceval at number 6, Niime at number 7, Rutger's number 8. Oh, Rutger, Zealot, and Melady are all tied for 8th place. And then we got Dieck, Shanna, Lugh, and Clarine tied on 11th place. I don't know why they're all 11 and then we got 15. That's kind of weird. We got Echidna, Saul, Noah, Lilina, Treck, Ogier, Klein. Wow, Ogier's a lot higher than I thought he'd be. Klein, Shin, Gonzales, Elen, Tate, Raigh, Zeiss, Cecilia, Green, Yodel, Chad, Juno, Diane, Geese, Hugh, Fear, Sue, Astor, Roy, Fave, Garrett, Wade, Lot. Who's the worst? Actually, you guys won't be able to see it unless I minimize it. Because I have Camtasia's a bit shitty. The worst unit is Hector, but that's, I mean, he's not playable. So all of these units at the bottom here are non-playable ones. Merlinus is so... Barth is actually the worst playable character, like, after Merlinus and Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is actually better than Barth. Yeah, this seems pretty good, actually. All of these units are pretty bad. Garrett, I think, probably would have been a little higher. But yeah, I'd say this is a pretty good tier list. I'm sure some of you guys are going to disagree a little bit with my choices. Where's Hugh? Or Lugh? Where's Lugh? He's number 11, tied with Shanna, Dieck, and Melady. I'd say this is pretty accurate. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. That was my tier lists, and now I'm gonna go and speedrun Fire Emblem 6 and put it below this one, so let's see how I do there. Alright, that's my webcam, isn't it? Alright, bye.